If you've got the big three major categories of prepping already taken care of, what I'm talking about is food, water, and security, and you feel very comfortable with where you're at with those preps, where do you go to next? What do you focus on next? Well, stick around for the rest of the video. I'm gonna let you guys know what I'm working on next in order to maybe give you some ideas on what you should be working on as well. Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and today we're going to talk about what to work on next when you've gotten the big three prep categories out of the way. If you've got your food situation pretty comfortable, your water situation figured out, and your security situation taken care of, then where do you move on from there? Yes, you can always improve in those categories and you can always add more to those preps, but you also have to make sure you're well-rounded in order to respond correctly to any SHTF scenario that might occur. So if you are prepping for SHTF and you want to know where to move next when it comes to prepping, hit the subscribe button below, because we'll keep talking about it on this channel and try to see if we can help each other with more ideas and more advice on how to stay motivated to be prepared. So, moving on from food, water, and security, which are the big three, in my opinion at least, of what you need to focus on first and what you need to make sure you're comfortable with in order to make sure you can survive the longest during a grid down SHTF long-term event of sorts. Where do you go from there? Well, for me, I've got about three categories I'm starting to work on a little bit more aggressively now that I feel more comfortable where I am with the first three categories we talked about. So first things first, I'm gonna work on training and education, okay? And what I mean by that is there's a wide spectrum of different training and education you can receive that can help you stay better prepared and help you survive longer if things go down. And a lot of us already know about firearms training. Yes, of course you should take firearms training courses if you are new to the game. And a lot of people are. If you are new to prepping and survivalism and you're maybe a new firearm owner as well, make sure you go out and get proper training so that you can not only be safe, but so that you can also be effective if you ever find yourself in a position where you need that firearm you recently purchased. So of course that is on the list, and I am actually seeking out more advanced training at this point just to kind of keep myself motivated and moving forward when it comes to that realm, okay? But hand in hand with firearms training is also first aid training. If you don't have a proper etiquette of first aid, especially when it comes to things like firearms handling, if you're not prepared to deal with what a firearm can do to someone, since you're possibly carrying one and it could happen to you, you need to make sure you learn how to now while you're able to. And first aid goes the whole gambit. It goes from getting heat rash all the way up to stopping an arterial flow, right? And of course, not all of us are gonna have the skills required to deal with some of the bigger traumas when it comes to first aid, but learn what you can while you can now, especially because places offer courses on first aid on a regular basis. And something as simple as the Heimlich maneuver can save somebody's life, but if you don't know how to do it, you might not be able to save that person, especially when there's no 911 to call. So first aid training is also on the list of things that I'm looking to advance in. I'm also looking to advance in survival training or wilderness survival, bushcraft, whatever you want to call it, learning how to get by off the land when you're on your own. Now, we all speak about wilderness survival and bushcraft in the sense of bugging out, right? Leaving society forever and never coming back. However, that should be a last resort option and shouldn't be something you rely on as a plan for how to get through whatever's coming next. But if you ever get into a position where that is required, or if you live in a rural area where scavenging for different edibles in the woods might be something that you'll have to do eventually to make sure to stay forward on your food supply, then learning how to do those things now is going to help you a lot when that time comes. So getting more wilderness survival training never hurts anyone. If you've never taken a course on it, it is actually very fun and you learn a lot. But you'd be surprised how many people out there can't even start a fire if given even the right tools, including matches or lighters or whatever it may be. So make sure you get that training as well, and hopefully I can get some more training in that aspect also, but even just getting out and doing the things that you need to do when it comes to survival bushcraft helps you get ahead, aka going camping or hiking and trying your best to live off of what the land provides can definitely give you some access to that information. Okay, another thing to definitely be on top of is going to be gardening, okay? If you don't know how to plant and grow your own crops of sorts, even if it's something as simple as maybe herbs or even peppers or something on the lower end of the spectrum of being able to provide yourself with caloric intake, learn how to do those things now, because that is a big mistake a lot of people make. If you don't know how to garden and you just think you're going to plant seeds when that time comes and then they're going to magically grow, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. And that's something I need to work on also. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I could definitely use some fine tuning in the Department of Gardening. So make sure that you're doing that. Also, if you need help, there's plenty of information out there to help you through with that. But if you also know somebody who does their own gardening, that's going to be a great resource for you. And there's always somebody at work or one of your neighbors who grows tomato plants or something along those lines, right? So learn from those people and do what you can now, so when you actually have to rely on that food source, you're not going to be caught off guard and unable to produce, okay? So that's something I'm looking into to get more information on. And the same thing goes for ham radios or comms in general, okay? I'd like to get an amateur license when it comes to ham radio usage, and I'd like to be able to legally operate a ham radio. So that's something I'm looking into as well, to get my license, to make sure I can go out and be better at utilizing comms and having the legal access to those comms to be able to use them even when there's not times of turmoil. That way I know how they work, I know what frequencies are where I need to be, and I can establish a network of folks, who knows, around the country, that we might be able to communicate better. And a lot of people will tell you that communication and comms is going to be your best form of intel if things go south, and it can put you ahead of the game, and it can help you stay alive longer because you know things that other people don't. So if you're not working on comms now, make sure you are, okay? Get your radios established, get the tools and equipment you need, and then go out and get the right training. So another thing I'm looking into doing, and another thing I'm excited to acquire, would be a ham radio operator's license. Okay, so the last thing on the list of skills or training or education, things you should try to learn now and things that I'm pushing myself forward on in order to be more well-rounded, is going to be the literature associated with it. We often talk about grid down, right? We often talk about the idea of not having electricity or internet. And if we don't have those things, how are you going to progress, or at least even just deal with particular situations, if you don't have any resources at all? So buy literature and read what you can now. These are things you store here, so that way when you need them, you don't have to look at your phone. These are things that you can reference, like some of the books I have over here, to just give you ideas about how to approach certain situations, especially when there's a situation of grid down and you have a lot of time where you don't have electricity or the usual things that keep people busy, and you have that time to read. These are going to be great resources for you. Books like the SAS Survival Handbook, the Survival Medicine Handbook, even the U.S. Army Survival Guide are going to be very useful in those times. And I will put links to those books down in the description and on the pinned comment. So if it's something you're interested in buying, you can, because it's going to be a good resource for you when it comes to moving your prepping forward, as well as if things do go south, then you have these resources available to you. Saying that also makes me think about the fact that I actually do take certain things and print them off, so I make sure I have more information available to me if things turn off one day. So this is like a step-by-step how to build a lower receiver, right? Well, I have that printed, so that way if I ever find myself in a situation where I need to do repairs or maybe build another lower, I can do that without having to go online and watch a YouTube video, right? So make sure you take the information that you find valuable to yourself now and print it off, because sometimes that's easier and cheaper than buying a ton of books. And if you want it to last for a long time, laminate it, do whatever you feel is right. But that is just what I'm working on now, and I'm pushing forward to get more of those resources and to have more access to that information, even without the grid up, okay? So what am I working on next when it comes to preps? Well, I think this is a huge one. I think a lot of us are already very on top of it, but I think everyone should move forward on it, especially if it's just something you're thinking about right now. And that is to generate your own renewable power. Getting your own renewable energy is going to have a huge effect on your ability to not just survive a long-term SHTF event, but to keep a level of comfort available to you and your family when those times of trouble arrive. You don't want to have to force yourself to live without power just because you weren't able to make the investment when you needed to, or just because you weren't able to put together a decent power generating setup in your location. So moving forward on power is going to be huge. It's going to bring you a lot of efficiencies that you wouldn't otherwise have access to without power. And it's going to make living in a post-SHTF environment a lot more comfortable for you and your family. And it's going to be a lot more useful for you to have that power so you can continue to use things that help make our lives a little more simple and a little bit more comfortable today. So in power for renewable energy sources that you can get as a survivalist and prepper, you're going to have access to things like solar power, hydro power, and wind power, okay? And each of them has their own pros and cons. You need to do research based on your location and where you live of what might work better for your situation, but having redundancy is always important in this game, right? So you want to have at least one or two to make sure that, let's say you have a solar setup and there's just no sunlight for a certain amount of time and you're not getting the power you need to recharge those batteries. Maybe you move in to the realm of hydro to make sure that that can help sustain that solar power you generally rely on. Those are things that everyone should be looking at. I'll leave examples of those different forms of renewable energy and some of the items you might need to power them down in the comments and the description below. So that way you have other ideas of things that are available out there. And one of these days here in the future, I'll actually be making a video about one of the cheapest solar generators you can buy on the internet and whether or not it is a good buy. Because I know a lot of us are on a budget and I know a lot of us don't have a huge amount of expendable income to keep prepping and keep building up our stockpiles. So if I can find something that's really cheap on the grand scale of things and actually works and does what it's advertised to do, then I want to be able to share that with you all. And if it doesn't work and it's terrible, I got to tell you about that too, because I want to make sure you don't waste your money on things just because they seem like a good deal. So that is another thing I'm heavily focusing on, and I'm moving into next phase because I want to make sure that when things go south, I'm not relying on anyone else but myself for power, okay? And that's going to be huge for you and your family, especially when it comes to being comfortable, okay? Now, this last one is a struggle for a lot of us, including myself. It's just because of the equation of how life seems to work these days. And some of us have done a good job of avoiding it. Some of us have done a good job of getting rid of it, but it's something that we all as SHTF preppers should do a better job at and focus on heavily, and that is getting rid of debt. And I know this is a dead horse that people beat constantly, but it's true. The amount of stress and the weight on your shoulders that debt can hold is immense. And the amount of freedom that you lose by having debt is huge because you're not able to move freely to where you need to go due to the fact that you have this debt. So it turns into a ball and chain that keeps you from being able to accomplish your goals and keeps you from being able to do things that a lot of us want to do, i.e. buying a house in rural America with some land so that you can homestead or, grow a family or whatever that might be. I have debt as well. I'm not debt free. I'm not one of those people here to tell you about how easy it is for me to live my life without debt. I have debt. I am working on getting rid of it. But it's not the easiest thing to do, as you all know. And sometimes you need a mortgage. Sometimes you need a new car. Sometimes you need a credit card. Those things are part of the way this game works right now in the current economy we have. And yes, are things changing rapidly? Of course they are. But if an economic collapse is going to be right around the corner and possibly cause things to have huge ramifications in the sense of your personal finances, having as little debt as possible can help you avoid some of those ramifications. So make sure you're doing what you can to pay that debt off. Now I know it's hard because we want to buy a solar generator. We want to buy a lot of different books. We want to buy awesome, firearms and flashlights, and we want to buy all the awesome survival gear. And of course you need those things. And of course if things go south, if you're debt free, but you have nothing else to rely on either, it's not going to be very good for you. You still need those things. So trust me when I say I understand the struggle of trying to be debt free and also buying a ton of food to stockpile in my house just in case I ever need it. Those things are a balance you have to figure out. but working on that debt will make you closer and closer to being self-sustainable and being free. And when I say free, I don't just mean from government. I don't just mean from other people's ideals and other people's concepts of what you should be doing with your life. I mean free in the sense of maybe not having to work that job, maybe not needing to work so hard that you don't enjoy your life because you have all these bills that you have to pay for. If you consider that idea, that if you get rid of debt, you can lower your expected income to a point where you're still comfortable without having to worry about those excess bills, that is a version of freedom in itself. So it's something I want you guys to think about and consider and keep top of mind when you're preparing, because you know what? It's really easy for me, personally, to go out and buy a ton of ammo and say, thank God I got some more ammo. I love ammo. But that money could have probably been better spent getting rid of some of that debt and making me even more free as a human being than what that ammunition is probably ever going to do for me. So that is something I am working on heavily. I'm focused on it and I want to get rid of it. So these are the things I'm sharing with everybody today. I want you guys to understand that this channel is about prepping. This channel is about SHTF. Sometimes we talk in the sense of speculation of what could or could not happen. Sometimes we talk about equipment that I prefer or equipment that I like. And sometimes we talk about ways to move ourselves forward. And today, that's what we're talking about, okay? So I want you guys to be able to continually prepare. I don't want you to just look at your water, look at your food, and look at your security loadout and say, I guess we're good here, because there's still more to do. And there always is. But we can actually take a educated approach, use our intelligence, and make sure that we don't find ourselves in a bad situation, especially if things never come to fruition in the sense of grid down SHTF Teotawaki, right? If we prepare in the sense of getting rid of debt, and we prepare in the sense of being self-sustainable and not relying on power companies for things like our electricity, especially if you live in California where they just shut it off sometimes. Those are things that even if we never experience a long-term SHTF scenario, that will still make you more free and have a better, more comfortable life. So if you have anything else to add to what you're focused on or what you're doing right now in the sense of prepping, leave it in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Everybody wants to talk down there because it's a good time and there's some great information. And if there's anything else you think I should be working on, I need to know as well. So thank you for that. And if you ever need something else from me, feel free to go to magicprepper.com, where you can then send me a contact form, which I will get through my email, and I will do my best to respond to you, but things are very tight lately in the sense of my schedule. So if you need anything, always feel free to do that, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. But without anything else to say about the next phase of prepping for me and what I was trying to maybe help you figure out what you need to do next, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.